All right. So I'm with Professor Litt, who graciously took me up on the question of talking about first mover advantages. And basically this came from a conversation we were having about early bird gets a worm versus second mouse gets a cheese.
Right.
And I asked Professor Litt if he would give me a few comments, and in typical of his fashion, he actually wrote out this very long thing and he turned it into video, which you'll watch next. That's the next part here. We were just looking at some examples of first mover advantages, and you mentioned Lululemon. I went, yeah, that's a good example. They came out with yoga wear first, and there's been knockoffs, but nobody else has displaced them. So that was a good example. Nike, the whole athletic shoe scientific design.
Bill Bowerman, right back to Steve Prefontaine.
Exactly. They've been number one, and they stay number one. Undergarment performance event, Under Armour.
Great.
They started it, they created the segment, and they're still number one.
They're still
number one. Right. Costco, Price Club, whole warehouse thing. They started that concept. Walmart copied them with Sam's Club, but still Costco's number one, right?
And in fact, Sam's came to Canada. Walmart expanded Sam's to Canada, and they got whacked, and they ended up retreating with their tail between their legs.
That's my favorite. Jeep. The first all-terrain vehicle, Jeep. In fact, Jeep is so popular that in Jamaica, any SUV is called a Jeep. So when your brand becomes the name of the product,
a generic, like a Kleenex tissue,
like rollerblades and so on. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, some of the losers, like people who might not remember the sat phone firms, but Netscape, you know, they created the concept of the browser, but now everybody uses Firefox and Bing, and yeah, exactly. Yeah. My favorite, of course, is Yahoo and Google. Yahoo's not a verb. People say I'm going to go Google something, but Yahoo was the first search engine. Why did they fail? Because they had banner ads that were too expensive, the algorithm didn't work.
Yeah. Google invested heavily in technology and went into maps and other links really quickly.
Yeah. So lessons learned, and you made some interesting points here.
Not sure if they're that valid, but I hope they're valid. Which ones do you want to talk about?
Well, first of all, the great leaders have great visions. Invest big, monitor landscape. So.
Yeah, so Skidoos are an example of a snowmobile that went from just an ice fishing, how to get there, or a transit item for people in the north, to something that was fun. So they kept juicing the horsepower and making them lighter weight and faster.
That's right.
It's a good example of seeing the changing parameters of
the whole recreational outdoor thing, and they just kept making better and better products and basically created something that didn't exist before.
Exactly, and whereas the Blackberry was a brilliant smartphone for diplomats and legal people and a very responsible email secure device, the whole category switched into recreation and leisure, and are you surfing, and Apple was far more on top of that in the Android platform too.
Plus they got the whole thing with the apps going, the high pixelization cameras, the whole thing with selfies and stuff like that.
Great music libraries and to download immediately, and iTunes, etc.
So basically for students looking at this, these are not necessarily business models, these are basically concepts of positioning yourself at the beginning of some new endeavor, whether you can be the early bird that gets a worm and then stay in front, or the second mouse gets a cheese. And basically in business and marketing, there are possibilities for both situations to exist. So if your company is in second place, you don't have to stay in second place. You could be the second mouse gets a cheese. But if you are in front, there are certain things that you can do to stay in front, and it's important to monitor the landscape.
Absolutely monitor the landscape, watch for changing criteria and the types of criteria in the segmentation of the market. If it evolves, you've got to shift and evolve. And these guys are some examples of people who have done it very well. Sadly,
well, I guess the 6 E's, political, economic environment, social, cultural, technological, geographic, and competitive.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.